Hey, how's it going? I am MisterBo and we're doing something completely different for today's video. So back in April, I put up a video on the channel called Wumpa League Leaked Main Menu, and it was for April Fools and it didn't fool most of you. Some of you guys fell for it, but I noticed in the comments a lot of people were just asking how I put this together. Some people said, hey, is this a mod for Crash Bandicoot 4 you made, or how did you do it? So in this video, we're going to be breaking down how I put together the fake leak, and it was basically a load of Photoshop, Illustrator, and After Effects. We're trying to reach 30,000 subscribers by October, which marks the 10th anniversary of this channel, and I think it would be pretty neat if we were able to hit 30,000 subscribers for that. So yeah, if you're new around here, or maybe you watch my content but you've just never subscribed, would appreciate if you could subscribe and help us reach that milestone. With that out of the way, let's dive into the project file here in After Effects. So this is what I called the main comp here. These are all the different layers, but they're all pre-comped. And you can see all these different tabs are basically all the different elements, and in each of those tabs there's a bunch of layers making up each thing. So let's get into it. The first thing I started with was the Wumpa League logo, and it was a pretty easy logo to put together because we've been teased on Wumpa League for over a year now. We've had all these different images come out, starting with the original one in Crash 4, which was this Wumpa fruit on this blue and orange swirl. And over like the last year or two, it's kind of transitioned to this more blue and red look. And we had these two stickers from the PlayStation ad, one with a Wumpa fruit, one with a gem. And at the time, I actually recreated the Wumpa fruit one. And then thanks to Activision sending me like a Christmas package, I actually got the actual sticker of the gem one, and from that sticker was able to recreate it. So we had these two recreations of the logo, so I could kind of use those as a starting point, taking the blue and the sort of red swirl and doing something with that. Now in these two stickers we always had something over the middle, so I kind of had to work out what it would look like when these two things met each other underneath the fruit or the gem. Thankfully, we had this sort of leaked artwork, which we got again in June, which gave us this sort of jagged edge to them. So that's kind of where I went with this. If we take off the text, you can see we have this kind of circle split, kind of looks like Sonic fighting Knuckles, or like the fusion from Yu-Gi-Oh! But this is what we landed on, and then I layered over the text of Wumpa in the Crash style. Kind of had to work a bit on this to make it look like the actual Crash font, because obviously the W, the U, the M, and the P, well, they don't appear in the word Crash, so I kind of had to make them up as best as I could in the same kind of style. With this newer, flatter Crash font that they have, every single letter connects to the next one, but then they also have this kind of drop shadow to separate them. So again, tried my best to recreate that as best as I could, and then added this little like a drop shadow to it to give it that sort of little bit of 3D-ness that the Crash Bandicoot 4 one has. We then added the word League. Now, most people probably would have used the Zoinks font, which is what Insane Trilogy, Nitro Fueled, and Crash 4 use. I absolutely hate that font, so we went with the next best thing, which is the main menu font that Crash Bandicoot 4 uses, and I think maybe the other games use it as well, but this is just the demo version of a font called like Geek. I'm not entirely sure what the actual name is, but yeah, it's the Crash Bandicoot 4 font, and I think it worked pretty well here, all in caps. And yeah, that is the logo that I came up with for Wumpa League. I think it works pretty well. We know this is going to be some sort of multiplayer game if it still exists. So yeah, that's what we landed on. But of course, we can't just have a static logo. So we had to animate this, and I kind of used Crash Bandicoot 4's menu as a reference here, basically copying the animation that it has. So what I mean by that is the logo of Crash Bandicoot 4 starts off small, and then it kind of grows up big, hits a point, and then kind of comes back in, and then kind of does this sort of bounce effect. So that's what we went with here. I copied it frame for frame, but then I added the sort of spinning effect on this to add a little bit more motion, making it a little bit more fun to look at, and we added a bit of motion blur as well. Now you'll also notice there's another version of it behind, and this is what the Crash 4 menu does. It adds sort of like a ghosting effect that comes zooming towards you, but then just fades away. It doesn't do that pull back and then the bounce. Again, I guess just to add some more emphasis on it coming towards you. So we basically copied that, and then we did the exact same animation on the word Wumpa, like so, and then we did the exact same animation on the word League, but with one slight difference is that we actually animated some tracking on League, which is basically the distance between each letter. So as you can see, it kind of separates a little bit, and then it zooms back in and has that little bounce effect, which I think worked pretty well. And overall, I was pretty happy with how this came together, with it being like the first thing that I actually worked on. So from there, we had the logo. We now needed to come up with the main menu. Let's head to the main menu background. So this was going more for the Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled kind of look. And we started with this very light blue gradient, very similar to Nitro Fueled, but Crash Bandicoot 4 is a little bit darker, not as bright. So we added a hue and saturation. We changed the hue to be a little bit more warmer, a little bit darker, and still wasn't happy with that. So I actually added an adjustment layer on top to make it, again, even a little bit darker. We then added the Wumpa fruit, which I'd made for those stickers, which is just a simple vector logo. And we added, I believe, motion tile to it, which basically tiles that same Wumpa fruit infinite amount of time. And then from there, all we needed to do was animate it slowly moving up towards the right, which is what the Nitro Fueled main menu does with all the different icons. So pretty simple thing here. If we just click on this, you can see this is the original file made in Illustrator. It's a vector. So yeah, pretty simple stuff there. Nothing too crazy. With the main menu, we also added this, which was a sunburst, which comes behind the logo. It's just a star with a load more points and then a feather mask. And this doesn't actually rotate around the center of the anchor point, but it doesn't appear long enough for you to even notice. So it doesn't really matter. As you can see, it doesn't actually rotate in the center of the shape, but it's fine. The final thing we added, actually, the final two things we added were the TV lines, which are somewhere here, background lines. Now this is going from Crash Bandicoot on the Run, had this effect on some of the main menus, so I thought we'd use it here. And it's simply just a line using Reptile, which duplicates it up and down with a feather mask on the sides to give us that old TV style, and then that just rotates slowly going down, giving a little bit more interest to just a plain background. And then the final thing we added here to the main menu is this tribal pattern, which again I took from Crash Bandicoot on the Run, and this was basically in quarters, so it was just this one section. So I remade it from scratch because most things that I found for On the Run were pretty low quality, and then I kind of duplicated it and rotated it around, so we had this full circle, which kind of just added that, I don't know, Crash Bandicoot-ness to this, that kind of tribal aesthetic that you get in most Crash Bandicoot things, making it feel, I think, a little bit more believable. So this is kind of where we ended up with the menu. Obviously there's a few more elements here that we'll break down now. So starting off with the beginning, we have these two red and blue sections come in either side. Now this is going off of the sort of smashed glass look in Crash Bandicoot 4, but also taking in some inspiration from Overwatch as well. Now these are the menu intro borders, and if we go down into these again, you can see how I put this together. So these are all the different elements of this individually, and then one by one they slowly animate in from the right, one by one, and then they kind of wobble around a little bit to have that sort of movement that they have in Crash Bandicoot 4. Pretty simple stuff. And then that was actually sort of reversed, so they come back out, and then we duplicated that, turned it around and turned it blue, and that's how we have the other version, which is the blue side. So it's like the exact same thing, just rotated around, and the color changed on it. And again, that was to replicate the sort of smashed glass look from Crash Bandicoot 4 and add in that kind of blue versus red that we see in the main logo. That then animates out, and then we get this other menu border coming in at the top and the bottom, which is what I called the second border, but I had caps lock on. And this is just basically this little bit at the top, a little bit at the bottom, animating in and having that kind of bounce effect still, because everything needs to have that little like bounce to make it Crash Bandicoot, it seems. So the only other things we really added to this were obviously the main menu buttons, which I created from scratch, basically just following the template that we have in Crash Bandicoot 4. We had 3 buttons here, 2 blue, 1 in the orange. They animate in the exact way that they do in Crash Bandicoot 4, which is just sort of a little jiggle that they come in with. As you can see, they kind of jiggle in and then they find their spot and they land. And they also have this sort of reflection, which is basically just a lighter color slowly moving over the top. Here you can see it in a bit better. This is the multiplayer button. Didn't try too hard on this because no one's really going to see this. But yeah, that's the menu buttons. These probably took a little bit of work just to make sure they animated in right, but as you can see, I do have a reference video here, but because I deleted that file because I didn't think I'd use it again, but I basically just kind of copied the animation from Crash Bandicoot 4. So the only other elements are the elements at the top and the bottom of the screen. So we had the developer logos, Activision Toys for Bob, Beanox, and my logo. And then we also had the press start at the beginning, which is basically just text, nothing animating here. We had the Wumpa fruit at the beginning here actually. Appears for a split second, which has this sort of being bitten away kind of animation to it, which I then used again for the loading before this even appears on the screen, which is basically just this Wumpa fruit logo, which again I made before, but with like circles being taken out of it, and that kind of just appears for like a split second to act as the sort of loading icon, which again you have in Crash Bandicoot 4, but it's kind of this swirl. But I didn't want to add another swirl, seeing as we've kind of already got that with the main Wumpa League logo. So the final things are just these elements at the top of the screen. So these are all icons from Crash Bandicoot on the Run. The problem with all the icons from Crash Bandicoot on the Run is they're all white mainly, but they're also from a mobile game, so they're all very low quality. So I remade all of these from scratch in Procreate, added some fun colors, added a little bit of a glow around this one, which also kind of bounces in and out, so it looks like that's the one that's selected. And then on the right side we have the Wumpa TV with a little TV, again from Crash on the Run, and this is kind of being like CTR TV, but I thought maybe this would be something in the game where you have news and updates, patch notes, maybe this is where you access the store or something like that, and this is just a couple of different icons from On the Run mashed together to make it a little bit more interesting. And yeah, I think that pretty much wraps this up, and that gives us the final thing. There's a few other elements here. For instance, we have like the username come up, which again is following the exact same animation from Crash Bandicoot 4. As you can see, I put the username as JK AprilFools, which a few of you actually noticed. And then we also have the Wi-Fi logo that comes in for a brief second, and that is literally just the Wi-Fi logo, again following the exact same animation from Crash Bandicoot 4. So there you have it. Let me know what you think in the comments below about my Wumpa League leak. Did it for you at the time, or maybe you didn't? And what do you think about how I put it together? If you have any questions about anything in After Effects, about how I did certain things, you can leave that in the comments below. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, click that like button, and if you're not already, subscribe. Let's try and hit that 30,000 subscriber milestone by October. Apart from that though, appreciate you guys for watching and for hanging out as always, and hopefully I'll catch you around in the next one. Till then though, take care. Cheers.